I did my internship with the United States Women's National Olympic Soccer Team, which is a whole big mouthful to understand. It really, as a soccer player and as someone who has played soccer for the majority of my life, you have to understand that all sports have Olympic teams, but no one has a U.S. national Olympic team that plays year-round. Soccer is the world's biggest sport. So even for men and women, they play all year round. So, and we have kind of like the mecca of soccer, which is not the Olympics, actually, believe it or not. It's called the World Cup. And the Women's World Cup happened last year. And actually my internship was during the Women's World Cup. So you have to understand that as a really young soccer player, I grew up watching this person called Mia Hamm, who you see on the Wheaties box, and she's just like this godlike creature who you think could not possibly do any wrong. Well, I did not get to meet Mia Hamm, but I did get to meet everybody that I had ever put any faith in as a child. And honestly, it's a psych internship, and I think I really gathered some psych-like knowledge, realizing that everybody's just kind of the same type of person. They're just people every day like you and me, and that was something that I will never forget. That is that I will never put anybody else on a pedestal again. Not that I was disappointed by the people I met, but I guarantee you that they were much more people-like to me, and that meant more than just watching them on TV. So, but I did an internship with two companies, which kind of melded together into the same. The U.S. national team consults to what's called X Factor Psychology, the X Factor Performance Psychology program. So what it is X Factor Psychology is run by a woman named Dr. Tiffany Jones, who is this lady right here. So she is the CEO of X Factor Performance Consulting, and they freelance themselves to the United States national team. So she did the men's and women's national team, and she did their lead psychology. So I kind of had two jobs. With the national team, I dealt with matters of the national team where I was seen and not heard. I met with the girls. I had no. You good, Walter?
As far as you can.
Yeah, like the 1, 2. Okay, so basically, I worked with the U.S. national team, and I met the girls, but I didn't really interact with them as much, and that was actually probably best for me because I was kind of like a little kid, like just looking at them. And much like Grace and much like Jennifer, it was something that I put a lot of my life into. So I worked with the national team, and I was seen and not heard. I reviewed files, and most of what I did was very confidential. So I would, sit and review their files and then post meeting. So TIFF would have a meeting with a national team member or the team as a whole, and then post meeting we would meet and work on treatment plans. Based on a dad that was getting burned out, they were having certain kind of athletic issues. And that was the main part of what I did with the U.S. national team. My actual main thing I did is I worked with the X Factor Performance Consulting alongside TIFF. And what we did is we worked with little kids and we helped them better their soccer minds and better themselves as teammates. And a team is a whole, but it's a whole made up of a lot of singles. And that's something that unless you've been on a team, I guess you don't really understand. As a single person on a team as a whole, you have to understand yourself a lot before you can understand the team as a whole. And that was kind of what we did with the kids. So, and try to explain that to a little kid. It's a little difficult, more difficult than So back to the national team. These are the girls. This was their first game of the qualifying U.S. national games that they did for the FIFA World Cup. And this is a huge picture, and they got huge smiles on their faces. But there's 11 girls that play on the team at a time. And these are the people I met, these are the people I worked with. And a lot of them had just problems like you and me. And like I said, most of it's confidential, but most of it, they had relationship issues, they had issues with their parents. They had a lot of issues with their game in general. Being a professional at something doesn't give you a free pass to not be upset about it. You know, it's, you automatically are going to have those things where you look inside yourself and, am I working as hard as I can? I think that was a lot of what they did. But like I did say, my internship was through the duration before and after the World Cup. So I actually didn't get to see the girls for about 2 months, but I saw them before and after. And I guess the most I could say that helped me out with that is that I really did learn that they're just people like you and me. I can't say it more than that they really are just everyday people. But this is the kind of stuff we did with the kids. This was a group of kids that we actually sent with the girls for the World Cup, and here they are outside the stadium. Just a big smile on my faces because they're just so happy to be there. But this was a group of, I think they were U15 girls that we worked with, and what we would do is we would go, and we would go and we would come to their practices. We would tell them it's a no-ball practice. For a soccer player, a no-ball practice is a kind of scary thing. We have one soccer player now, so she's laughing. But a no-ball practice is a very scary thing. You're not sure if you're going to run, you're not sure if you're going to be yelled at. You don't know what's going to happen. Well, a no-ball practice for us at X Factor Consulting consisted of things like shoelaces. And this is very innocuous little item. No one could possibly know what to do with shoelace, right? Well, what we would do is we would have the teams, we would split them into 2 groups. And they would take 2 shoelaces, it's only one. They would take 2 shoelaces and they would spread it about a foot apart on either side to make something like this. And they would have to get their whole team through the shoelace without having clothing, body parts, anything touching the shoelace. And it was interesting. It was a very interesting thing to do this with boys, girls, varying ages. We did it with the national team. We did it with the football teams. We did it with a lot of people you wouldn't want to see crack under pressure, but they kind of freaked out, to say the least. They had a hard time with this. Now the kids, the boys, they were very interesting. They would take the smallest guy and they'd pull his shorts all the way up and they'd just chuck him through. And we had one kid break his nose, we would do that again. And then the girls would pull their shorts up all the way and tie their hair up and knot their shirts, and they would just make their clothes as small as possible, and they just try to wiggle themselves. So that didn't work either. What they were supposed to understand, which they never got until the very end, until we kept hinting at them, is they had to do it in kind of a wheelbarrow fashion. They had to use each other to get through this. So it's a single person thing. You only have to have one person through the hole. But what you don't understand is that you have to have 2 people to do it. And that's what, it was remarkable when they made that connection. Just kind of like, why didn't you think about that? You're like, no, you didn't, because you are in your head and you're your only person. You think, okay, I got to worry about me getting through because I don't want anybody to be mad at me for messing it up. Because I didn't tell you, but if they messed it up, they had to turn around and start over. So they raced, and once they figured it out, it was pretty remarkable how they just got right through it and didn't have any problems. No one's shorts touched, no one's hair touched, nothing. So it was difficult. And over here, we had tennis balls, and I know it's a soccer sport, so I'm wearing a tennis ball. Tennis balls are brightly colored. What it was is we had 6 or 7, maybe 8 brightly colored tennis balls. And what we would do is we would have everyone stand in a circle, and you would hand one person the ball, and we'd say, okay, you throw the ball to one person. And they can only have it once, and you can't throw it to someone more than twice, and every person has to get it. So they do this, and then they create a pattern, and they hand it back to you. Okay, now what? You're like, okay, do it again. And you're like, what do you do again? You're like, well, you have to remember now who you threw it to. It blows my mind that you're just following instructions, you're just doing what you're told. You're not necessarily really viewing the exercise as it should be viewed. You should, as a human being, remember who you threw it to and who you caught it from, but they didn't. So once they remembered that, they had to memorize their pattern. And then we introduced the 7 or 8 balls. And they're all different colored. And the first exercise was to learn how to use your team for things, and this exercise was to learn how to focus. All these balls were different colored. So when you would start the exercise, they would just lightly toss them back and forth. And the ball couldn't be dropped, and they couldn't hit each other, and they couldn't fall on the ground, but everyone was in a circle. And they just couldn't do it. I mean, it took probably 30, I think it was 32 tries for the men's national team to complete this correctly. 30, it sounds really simple, But when you take different colored balls and you throw them at people, they kind of lose their minds. And for some reason, they just don't know what they're doing. And I guess it was mainly because they should remain focused on the person they're catching and receiving from, and the person they're throwing to. But in actuality, they would have caught the blue ball and thrown it. And then they would be receiving the yellow ball, and their eyes would track to the blue ball because they're not focused enough. That's the ball they just had rolling around. And it's hard to imagine, but no one can get it. I mean, the little kids got it faster than the national team got it. And the football players, we did it with different color footballs. And I think we did this, well, I didn't actually personally do it, but I think they did this actually at the Indianapolis Colts. And they never got right, because they just got mad. They were just mad at each other. They just couldn't possibly figure out how to do it. And the fact that they got pissed off is what really helped them understand that, getting mad can really affect your focus. And as an athlete, you don't want your focus affected. That's your game right there. So that was an important thing for them to learn. And it's important as a human being to learn that you really have to tailor your focus. Even pro athletes can't tailor their focus. And so these are, not only are these good exercises for kids to learn and for adults, but also for working people, everyday people like you and me, to learn how to focus on something, be it that it's different colored or there's 6 or 7 balls flying at you at once. There's always something that you need to focus on what matters. So, and there's a third game that I just want to introduce. So basically there were 3 games, and yet again the national team had a horrible problem with this. But we would take 3 people, and it's kind of like the I hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. One person could speak, but not hear or see. And one person could hear, but not speak or see. And they each had one job, and neither of them could do the other 2 jobs. And they would stand in front of each other, and only one person was allowed to move. And what you would do is you would throw a special colored ball, and the one who could see would watch where the ball went, and then the one who could hear had to be told by touch what to say, and then the one who could not see but could hear could walk around and try to find the ball, but their eyes were closed. So it sounds really complicated, but basically you would have one person touching the left shoulder, which meant say go to the left, and then we call it the robot game, then your robot would have to go to the left, and you would only have to rely on your teammates solely to find the ball. And actually the national team surprisingly picked this up relatively quickly. Kids had a huge problem with it. It was kind of a little above and beyond them, but yet again the football team, they just couldn't get it. It was kind of over their heads. It was too much for them to take. And this was a big deal on learning how to communicate with each other. It's hard to explain, but communication is going to be a huge thing. And when one of your teammates has an impairment, meaning they can't see behind them or they don't know that an attacker's coming, it's important for you to be able to relay that information quickly and in an understandable fashion. So that was something that they learned, and that was a huge deal. Basically, this is just a picture of the post. Basically, this internship kind of fell into my lap, and I say that loosely, but it did. I had a job for the Atlanta Beat, which is the women's pro soccer team here in Atlanta. I worked the stadium. I made sure that the girls' jerseys were tucked in, their shoes were tied before they went out and got on camera. And I would talk to the girls, we would chatter, and just kind of like they knew my name, I knew their name. It was not a cool thing. We just kind of saw each other for a second and then left. And I was standing in the middle of the stadium, and someone remarked on how professional they thought I was with the girls, and I said, oh, thank you. And they said, why are you looking for work? And I said, I'm looking for an internship, but not a soccer one, I'm sorry. And she pointed behind her and said, well, lucky for you, this is the psychologist of the women's national team. I think we're pretty qualified. And I was like, okay. So that kind of fell into my lap, and it ended up being one of the greatest things for me. I had a great time, and I couldn't have asked for a better experience, but much like Jennifer, I learned that it was not what I wanted to do with my life. At being an athlete and being in a psychology profession and getting a degree in psychology, I thought, seriously, what better could I do but marry my 2 favorite things? In all actuality, it wasn't the greatest thing. I had a great time, I had so much fun. I met these amazing women who you could actually never expect to meet and have dinner with and have lunch with in your life. But in all actuality, it helped me to realize that I didn't have enough medicine in it for me. I didn't have enough biology in it for me. And I've always been in the psych program, and I guess I've always kind of been the resident stepchild of the biology program. I just take a couple classes and then I leave. And so no one really wants to accept me, which is fine, I'm in the psych department, no big deal. But it really helped me to understand just as on a personal level that that's not what I wanted to do, and you just couldn't pay money for that. Like she said, I literally could not pay money for what I learned. And it, not even on a personal note, just from an academic standpoint, like she said, it was a stress-free course. It's not a big deal. I left it and I'm not even upset about it. I think that what if would have killed me for the rest of my life. And I don't know about you guys are in your long time careers talking about the teachers, and I hope the what ifs don't kill you. Because if my what if would have just nagged me my whole life, I think I would have been that 50-year-old in med school. And I don't want to do that. But these girls were great, and I had an absolutely amazing time. And I could not pay money for not having that. So, any questions?